jam-packed hour. The so-called blue wave turned out to be a farce. Media, pundits, Democrats, all wrong yet again. President Trump's aggressive, tough campaign strategy, his economic success, foreign policy success, led to political success. Last night, Democrats did win control of the House, but they lost seats in the U.S. Senate, and they also lost several high-profile, enormously well-funded races in states like Texas and Florida and Georgia. And Republicans, they still hold the majority of governorships all across the country. This, when we put this in perspective for you, you will see why this was such a great night. And we'll also show you how people on other networks, fake news CNN, conspiracy TV, MSNBC, reacted to this underwhelming blue trickle. Maybe we'll call it the trickle. Now, we also have highlights from the president's smackdown of CNN's Jim Acosta. By the way, he has now had his credentials at the White House, I argue, rightfully revoked. If I ever interviewed Barack Obama, I would never be that rude. And by the way, we'll put all of this in historical perspective, a very important Hannity history lesson on what midterm results are usually like. Perspective, I promise you will get nowhere else. Also tonight, a lot of breaking news. Jeff Sessions, he is out as the Attorney General. We're going to preview what it will be like with an attorney general who has not recused himself from the phony collusion witch hunt, which I'm sure we'll be back on tomorrow. And now we can have real investigations we will call for tonight, featuring actual, real Russia collusion with proof. And we're looking at, yes, your Hillary Clinton. And, of course, we have a huge lineup tonight. The great one, Mark Levin, former Speaker of the House, Gingrich, and so much more. And I have an announcement at the end of the show. It's important. So much information, so little time. I will answer the question why I was not on the air last night. There is an answer. I will explain it to you. All right, we leave election night to so many other people. By the way, congrats to everybody that was on last night. Let not your heart be troubled. It's time for our breaking news. Buckle up. Jam-packed opening monologue. All right, for months, Democrats, their friends on CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, New York Times, Washington Post, they all but were giddy, guaranteeing a huge, massive, enormous blue wave. They predicted that Americans would send a message to President Trump. They acted like Republicans have never been more unpopular, divisive, racist, sexist, and even worse. And guess what? Again, they were completely wrong. That blue wave never happened. Tonight, we do have a split Congress. Democrats picked up seats in the House of Representatives. Republicans, main control, gained seats in the U.S. Senate, increasing their majority. Republicans were also victorious in the most high-profile races, where literally tens and tens of millions of dollars were spent. In Texas, Democrats, almost $100 million, a little less than $100 million, they used to defeat Ted Cruz. Didn't work out. His opponent, Bozo O'Rourke, got support from celebrities, Beyonce, Jimmy Kimmel. Well, that was all a waste because Senator Cruz was reelected last night. In Florida, socialist darling of the left, Mayor Andrew Gillum was bolstered by a visit from Obama, a campaign concert even with Jimmy Buffett. Nearly every single poll predicted a Gillum win. Again, they were wrong. Republican Ron DeSantis supposedly had no chance. He is now the governor-elect of Florida. Good decision, Florida. In the Senate, Republican Rick Scott, he won against Democratic incumbent Bill Nelson. By the way, Nelson's being a bit of a crybaby. He wants to challenge the seat, wants to recount. Scott is up by tens and thousands of votes. That seat is now Rick Scott's. That's Senator Scott from Florida. In Georgia, former President Obama campaign, Oprah Winfrey campaign, even went door-to-door for Democratic gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams. Well, pro-Trump Republican Brian Kemp, he is over the 50% mark. That means there will be no runoff in the state of Georgia. Another win. Now, of course, one of these things that they all have in common is President Trump campaigned in all these states. He was in Georgia, Florida, Missouri, Indiana, Tennessee, North Dakota, Texas, where Republicans took home statewide victories. Now, Republicans will pick up what looks like a gain of 3 seats in the U.S. Senate. That is massive, especially when you look at the historical perspective. Democrats will get a net gain of around 35 seats. That gives them control. They needed 23 for the control of the House, but some results are still pending. Now, let me put this in perspective. Republicans actually had what is an amazing, historically speaking, election night. Now, remember, 44 House Republicans retired. That's a massive number. But here is the history. Here are the headwinds that very few people ever talked about. Let's go back. Let's start with 2010, Barack Obama's first midterm. Look at that. Democrats lost in his first midterm 63 seats in the House, 6 seats in the U.S. Senate. That's a total of 69. In 1994, Clinton Democrats lost 52 seats in the House, 8 seats in the Senate. That's a net loss of 60. Even Ronald Reagan, 1982, he'd only been in office 2 years. His first midterm, Republicans lost 26 House seats and gained 0 seats in the Senate. Since 1914, look at this. The president's own party has only picked up seats 3 times during the midterms, 3 times in over 100 years. We knew this going in. And during the same period of time, Donald Trump is only the 3rd president to gain Senate seats while losing seats in the House. And Trump campaigned for senators. He went state to state for those races he could campaign for. He couldn't go out and go to all 435 House districts with 435 different House candidates. That would be physically impossible. Now, keep in mind, during Obama's 8 long years in office, look at this. Democrats lost control of more than 1,000 state and national offices. By the way, he had a pretty bad night last night. It is a much different picture under President Trump, which the media won't tell you. Now, why is this all true? Well, let's look at the economic front. Our economy, thankfully, is booming. The forgotten men and women that we all talked about in 2016, they are now seeing prosperity that has been long overdue for them. 4.5 million new jobs created since Donald Trump elected. 4.3 million fewer Americans on food stamps. Over 4 million Americans out of poverty, thanks to this economic boom. On the manufacturing front, over 400,000 new manufacturing jobs Obama said were never coming back. Look at this. Employment claims are at a 49-year low. We are seeing record low unemployment. African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, women in the workplace, military veterans, and youth unemployment. Median household income in this country is hitting a record high. We saw 4.2% GDP growth in the second quarter, 3.5% in the most recent third quarter. This all comes as President Trump slashed regulations, promise made, kept, after he signed the single biggest middle-class tax cut in history, another promise that he made that's kept. You're not likely to see any of these statistics on television on any so-called news channel. On those networks, people were actively rooting for the blue wave that became a little trickle, a little drizzle. And in the lead up to the election, they were actually vilifying. They went insane in the days leading up to yesterday. All things Trump, nonstop. In a last-ditch effort to bolster their friends in the Democratic Party. They're literally an extension of all things liberal socialist Democrats, and they are like state-run Democratic media. Take a look.
If Trump wins, he will cast it as a complete endorsement of his most undemocratic behavior. If you're 18 and that happens, you stand a very real chance of not living in a Western-style democracy for part or all of your life.
He is a racist pig.
He is talking about white supremacist ideology.
What Donald Trump did was normalize racism.
Donald Trump is not only disgusting and vile, he's stupid.
This racist, heartless, soulless man.
The president's obviously a racist. He's obviously a demagogue.
This president has radicalized so many more people than ISIS.
Blah, blah. Last night, Republicans, well, they started to pick up big wins. Look at the states they're winning here. Florida, Tennessee, Indiana, Missouri. Massive victories in these states. And by the way, elsewhere, commentators, anchors, NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, once again, they started to crack up and melt down. It was like 2016 all over again for them. Take a look.
Tonight, there was some hope that the Democrats would have a wave election. It's not going to be a wave election.
We can tell that there is not a blue wave forming. There is not a blue tsunami that's going to repudiate Donald Trump across the country.
When you look at what's going on here tonight, this is not a blue wave. This is not a wave that is knocking out all sorts of Republican incumbents.
It just has to be said, the Democrats are having, so far, a lot of vote to come in, a disappointing night.
But they can't have, there's no tsunami. There's no tsunami coming. I mean, winning the House by one vote, by one member is enough for them, but there's a lot of disappointment.
This is heartbreaking, though. It's heartbreaking.
I'm still
My nails are still, like, clutching to hope.
I am thinking about the best laid plans in 2016, the Javits Center.
There's only so far science and polling and academics can take you.
They don't really take losing well. I'm going to be honest. I don't like to lose either. I enjoy winning. I didn't particularly like when Obama won, not once but twice. And not only did their once predicted blue wave not materialize, but their anti-Trump narrative has been rejected by you, we, the American people. And we're doing so much better. Ever since Donald Trump announced his run for office and Melania, Mr. Trump, come down that escalator at Trump Tower, they vilified everything this president has said or anything he has done. It has been an unprecedented amount of hatred, scorn, ridicule, attacks, delegitimization of this president. Some coverage has been downright, actually hysterical, apocalyptic, over the top. Here's just a small sample of what you see day after day, every second, every minute, every hour of every 24-hour day for over 3 straight years. All the same networks, and it never stops. And they can't help themselves, apparently. They must be, like, addicted to this hate. Take a look.
Is this president trying to impersonate Hugo Chavez, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Vladimir Putin?
He said today, America first. It was not just the racial, I shouldn't say racial, the Hitlerian background to it. Just like Kim Jong-un, what is he doing? Knocks off all his relatives when he gets scared. When you get scared of your position, you start killing people around you. We don't do that in this country. We fire them. Trump seems to know how to fire.
He's not of sound mind. That's somebody that clinically you look at and say, there's something wrong there.
Trump needs to be medicated and hospitalized.
Donald Trump, again, being a schmuck.
We can surely say his words have absolutely emboldened white supremacists.
He has given oxygen to racists. He is clearly trying to ignite a civil war in this country.
There's a sign out there that's been hung up in the White House or outside the White House saying, if you're not white, you're not especially welcome.
He's a racist.
When do we see almost a shadow government come out and say, we cannot side with the government?
Just downright disgraceful. And by the way, all over this is so-called news. Others speak in one voice with the Democratic Party, the state-run Democratic Party, despite false claims of impartiality, being fair and balanced. These people, they work every single day. They want to destroy the presidency of Donald Trump at all costs, even sadly, if it's going to hurt the people that are clearly benefiting in this country from his presidency. Isn't it supposed to be about serving people? And today at a press conference, the president came out with a conciliatory tone, kind words for likely incoming Speaker Pelosi, urging bipartisanship in the newly divided Capitol Hill. But guess what? People in the media, they wanted none of it. Especially true of CNN's Jim Acosta, as he all but called the president a racist, tried to debate the president, thinking that, oh, it's my TV show, and physically strong-arming a female White House aide, clearly angry that the blue wave his network predicted never materialized. This conduct is beyond reprehensible. Imagine anybody doing this to Obama. Take a look.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President, I was
enough.
going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr. President,
that's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other question.
That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation?
Mr. President. I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'm not responding. I'm responding to... Excuse me, I'm not responding to you. I'm talking to this gentleman. Will you please sit down? Excuse me, would you please sit down? Please go ahead.
All right, despite this despicable conduct, CNN actually is defending their chief White House correspondent, Trump hater, Jim Acosta. In a statement, CNN wrote that the president's conduct at today's presser was, quote, dangerous, disturbingly un-American. Well, breaking just moments ago, the White House responded, and they have suspended Acosta's White House pass until further notice. They wrote, quote, President Trump believes in a free press and expects and welcomes tough questions of him and his administration. We will, however, never tolerate a reporter placing his hands on a young woman just trying to do her job as a White House intern. Now, the fact that CNN is proud of the way their employee behaved is not only disgusting, it is an example of their outrageous disregard for everyone, including young women who work in this administration. CNN's nonstop apocalyptic rhetoric is not a winning message. Americans can see right through the biased vitriol, as we saw in the results last night. And by the way, Americans know Democrats have no plan to make their lives better, and it's only going to get worse. By the way, we have the best plan ever. Stay tuned. And now with Nancy Pelosi, the de facto leader of the Democratic Party, along with, let's see, the liar Shifty Schiff and Maxine Waters and Gerald Nadler, Democrats are sharpening their knives against President Trump. Many top House Democrats are now planning nonstop investigations into the president, all designed to make him look bad. How does that help we, the people? How does that help the Americans still in poverty on food stamps and out of work? Well, today the president responded to these threats. And guess what? Sometimes what's good for the goose, good for the gander, and it works both ways. Take a look.
Are you offering an my way or highway scenario to the Democrats? You're saying that if they start investigating you, that you can play that game and investigate
better than them.
Can you compartmentalize that?
And I think I know more than they know.
Can you compartmentalize that and still continue to work with them for the benefit of the rest of the country?
No.
Or are all bets off?
No. If they do that, then it's just all it is a warlike posture.
Now, currently, Nancy Pelosi has an average approval rating, a whopping 27.5%. And by the way, that's not going to get any better with the partisan political investigations. And as of now, Pelosi is the only leader in the Democratic Party. According to a recent poll ranking 2020 Democratic presidential contenders, well, none of the above actually topped the list. We'll have more on this throughout the show. And I will tell you, this is a huge deal. One thing we promise on this program, we are going to watch every day, and we're going to watch their actions and their rhetoric, and we're going to see what will they try to do to help the American people? Or is it just revenge? Is it about hating Trump? All right, we turn to another huge story, broke just hours ago. Jeff Sessions is now out as the Attorney General. In a letter, he wrote, "I have been honored to serve as the Attorney General and have worked to implement the law enforcement agenda based on the rule of law that formed a central part of your campaign for the presidency." One thing, a commentary here. I've known Jeff Sessions a long time. I personally thought he would be a great Attorney General. Thought it was a great choice. I know him to be a good man. I know that for a fact. For whatever reason, him and Sessions, Trump and Sessions, the president and Sessions, they just clashed from the get-go. And it started with the recusal, which shocked everybody, especially the president. And I think this probably was not the right job at the right time if that was his intention from the get-go. But I do think he's a good person. He has served his country honorably. Sadly, Sessions was MIA on one of the most important issues ongoing inside the halls of the DOJ. In just the first few weeks of taking office, Sessions recused himself from all things Russia. He should have told the president, in my belief, ahead of time. That ultimately led to Robert Mueller's special counsel and the witch hunt, which has now spent months, over a year, digging and digging and digging into everyone associated with Trump. No evidence of Trump-Russia collusion found, but Paul Manafort in prison over bank applications and tax fraud from years ago. A young Trump campaign staffer, George Papadopoulos, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, convicted of lying to investigators, nothing to do with Russia. Now with Sessions out, the acting Attorney General will be Matthew Whitaker. He'll oversee the Russia investigation. The left is racing to demonize this man as we speak. And as I've been shouting from a mountaintop for years, there are a lot of crimes and real actual collusion that needs to be investigated if we're going to have equal justice under the law. The Russian lies bought by Hillary Clinton, the dirty Russian dossier. Let's not forget about the strategy to leak those lies to you, the American people, from high-ranking members of Obama's government. Why? To influence the 2016 election and help Hillary with propaganda and Russian lies. FISA abuse, literally lying to a FISA court, literally abusing power before a FISA court, not telling them the truth on purpose. A Trump campaign official was actually spied on by your government, misleading FISA court judges, committing fraud, using the dirty dossier, circular reporting on that dossier as the bulk of their evidence for FISA warrants. In other words, fraud committed on a court to get a warrant to spy on a campaign associate of Donald Trump in the lead up to an election and influence the American people, and then bludgeon Donald Trump with things that are not verified or corroborated. And of course, this all goes back to Hillary Clinton's private server in a bathroom closet, how she was exonerated before an investigation even started, really. Weaponizing intelligence, FISA court fraud, insurance policies, a media leak strategy. So much for a real unrecused attorney general to investigate. We'll see what happens. Acting Attorney General Whitaker has a strong track record. That's why they want to demonize him. In a 2016 op-ed, he wrote that he would have indicted Hillary Clinton. In another, he wrote Mueller was going too far in his collusion investigation, and it did go too far. It looks like we could finally have an attorney general that is unrecused, will actually stand up for the rule of law, equal justice under the law, equal application of our laws. All right, when we come back, a lot of ground to cover tonight. Mark Levin, Newt Gingrich, Catherine Herridge, Greg Jarrett, Sarah Carter, and everyone's asking, why was I not on TV last night? I must have gotten in trouble. I'll explain. Straight ahead. All right, welcome back to Hannity. All right, for more on the midterms, Jeff Sessions' resignation today, we go to the great one, Mark Levin, host of CRTV's Levin TV. #1. By the way, your ratings were killer on Sunday night.
We do our best.
Great one. Thank me. Life, Liberty, and Levin right here on the Fox News Channel. Let's start with the results. I want 3 topics for you. You could go in any order. I want your take on the results, your take on the media, and your reaction to Jeff Sessions' resignation today.
Well, you know, Sean, in many ways, it's one and the same things. The media were very angry today at that press conference, and you have to wonder why. I thought the president, they said, had a lousy night. You know, the Democrats take about 34 seats, and I want the American people to understand what that means is they have an 11-member majority in the House. And with that 11-member majority, most of which are Republican seats, they intend to do everything they can to cripple the executive branch and cripple the presidency. And I'll get back to that in a minute. What we saw today in that press conference was a disgrace to this country. Imagine the world watching what took place there. These kamikaze journalists, obviously in a coordinated attack on this president, they're trying to cripple this presidency. They are trying to sabotage this presidency. It's not going to work, but that's what they're doing. They are furious that this blue wave was a blue tinkle last night, because that's all it was. And they've been talking about blue wave. They've been beating down this president, beating down the Republican Party, beating down these candidates. They pull out their racist tool to use, their white supremacy tool to use. They pull out their Nazi tool to use, their Hitler tool to use. They tried everything they could. You can't tell the difference between the Democrat talking points and the media in this country, because in many respects, they're one and the same thing. Survey after survey over the decades have shown us that most in the media are liberal. Most live and operate on the eastern seaboard and the western seaboard. Well, look what's going to happen now in the House of Representatives. Look at the diversity of Marxists and Leninists, pretty much. The Finance Committee, Maxine Waters, L.A. The, the House Oversight Committee, Gerald Nadler, Manhattan. The House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, L.A. Elijah Cummings, heading the Oversight Committee as well. He will be from where? Baltimore. And then, of course, you have Nancy Pelosi, San Francisco. So over here and over here. What about the middle of the country and the rest of the country? They're not going to be represented because the Democrat Party is controlled by these hardcore leftists. I am sick and tired of these media types trying to hijack these press conferences. These press conferences are for the American people. CNN, you don't even have an audience. It's not for you. It's not for MSNBC. And it's not for every harebrained, malcontent, miscreant Democrat liberal dressed up as a journalist. You know, we have standards in this country for doctors, for lawyers, for truck drivers, for plumbers, for electricians. What are the standards for journalists? Fake Tapper. Fake Tapper was a spokesman for a Democrat congresswoman. Then he was a spokesman for handgun controlling. Now he's a journalist. There's a guy that used to work for Obama who works at CNN. Now he's a national security reporter. What are their standards? There are no standards for journalists today. And let me tell the journalists, you say, tell the president, stop saying the media are the enemy of the people. No, he's not saying the whole media. He's said that 1,000 times. Let me tell the media something. The president isn't the enemy of the people either. And you should stop your campaign of trying to cripple him and destroy him. They're upset because there was no blue wave. They're upset they lost in 2016. They're upset they lost in 2018. And guess what? They're going to lose in 2022. Now, as for Sessions, it's a constitutional crisis, don't you know? What's a constitutional crisis? The president got rid of a cabinet secretary, the attorney general. He's only been telling us this for 10 months, what he plans to do. It's like the Saturday Night Massacre. They drag out John Dean, the guy that doesn't even have law license anymore, the guy who served time, as I seem to recall, through Watergate. Now he's a contributor to one of, what, CNN or MSNBC? There's an authority. And what does he say? It's like the president's plotting to kill somebody, a murder. Well, so he gets rid of Sessions. What? So what happens? He has an acting attorney general. Then I hear these so-called experts say, he can't do that. There's a rule of succession. Of course he can do that. Moreover, they say, it's like the Saturday Night Massacre. How? Did he fire Mueller? Did he order the attorney general to fire Mueller? Did he order the deputy attorney general to fire Mueller? He hasn't ordered anyone to do anything to Mueller. Mueller's still, you know, roaming the countryside, looking for people to prosecute and challenge and so forth and so on. Nothing's happened. But Schumer's there. Schumer's there. I think we have a constitutional crisis. Let me tell you something. This is an important point. I have said that the appointment of Mueller is unconstitutional. It violates the Appointments Clause. And Schumer proves my point every day. You know why? Because if Mueller was just like an assistant U.S. attorney, a U.S. attorney, they wouldn't keep saying, he's separate, protect him, he's different, he has to report to himself effectively. That's why his appointment is unconstitutional, because it's supposed to go to the Senate and be confirmed. Just a little nicety there that I wanted to mention as well. In any event, the Republicans had a very good night, and they had a good night, quite frankly, because of the president. It's the president who held the Senate and some of these excellent candidates. And the losses in the House could have been worse, but they weren't worse. And that's why the media are furious, Sean. That's the bottom line. And I'm going to tell the media something. You're humiliating yourselves. You're embarrassing yourselves. The American people, more and more, are turning on you, not because the president says you're the enemy of the people, but because you act like the enemy of the people. You know what we learned in this press conference today, thanks to the media? Nothing. A presidential press conference isn't for CNN, which doesn't have any viewers anyway. It's for we, the American people. You ask questions to elicit information from our president so we can know what's going on.
You know, Mark, I put up Barack Obama in his first midterm, 69 House and Senate seats. Bill Clinton, 60. 3 times it's happened where a president in his first midterm wins this many seats. That's it.
Yeah, but they're liberals, they're Democrats, they like them, so, you know, they get treated quite differently.
All right, great one. We call you the great one for a reason. Mark Levin, don't miss Life, Liberty, Levin. #1 show, Sunday nights, 10 p.m. You get to see it all right here on the Fox News channel. When we come back, our great historian, our friend, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, he will join us. Also, a live report from Catherine Herridge about Sessions' resignation and why wasn't I working last night? I'll tell you. All right, joining us now with the very latest on the resignation of Attorney General Sessions, the election, and, of course, well, poor Jim Acosta. Anyway, Fox News chief intelligence correspondent. First on, we get a report from our friend Catherine Herridge on Sessions. What's going on, Catherine?
That's right, Sean. This morning, White House Chief of Staff John Kelly asked Attorney General Jeff Sessions to resign, and the news went public after the president's news conference. A source close to the administration told Fox that Whitaker is well liked by the president and not seen as an FBI or Justice Department insider who came up through the ranks with Special Counsel Robert Mueller, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, and others. Whitaker, who was Sessions' chief of staff at the Justice Department and is now Rosenstein's boss, is already under scrutiny tonight for tweets and an op-ed he wrote last year about a red line he said Special Counsel Mueller should not cross. Quote, "It does not take a lawyer or even a former federal prosecutor like myself tough to conclude that investigating Donald Trump's finances or his family's finances falls completely outside of the realm of his 2016 campaign that goes beyond the scope of the appointment of the special counsel. Behind the scenes, Whitaker was described to Fox News as a quiet advocate for the declassification of the Russia records, which include the surveillance warrant renewal for a Trump campaign aide approved by Rosenstein in 2017. The president recently backed away from the declassification, but today seemed to indicate it is back on track.
Well, we're looking at that. No, we're looking at that very seriously. Declassification, we're looking at very seriously.
Okay, can I ask one more question?
It's amazing how people on the other side just don't want those documents declassified. But no, we're looking at that very carefully. I certainly wanted to wait till after the midterms.
Before last night's vote, a source close to the Russia congressional probe told Fox that they believe the White House would move quickly on the Justice Department's shakeup if Republicans expanded their Senate majority, virtually guaranteeing a relatively smooth confirmation for the president's choice to ultimately lead the department. Sean.
All right, Catherine Herridge in our Washington bureau tonight. Thank you. Here with reaction, author of the bestseller Trump's America, The Truth About Our Nation's Great Comeback, Fox News contributor, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. The year you became Speaker, first time Republicans won in 40 years, Bill Clinton, between the House and the Senate, he lost, 52 House seats, 8 Senate seats. Obama in 2010 lost 6 Senate seats, but a whopping 63 House seats. I would say, by historical standards, the president picking up all these seats in the Senate is a spectacular win for the president and some of the most heavily financed races. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that's right. I think, first of all, if you look at the average between Obama, Clinton, and Trump, Trump clearly did dramatically better, almost twice as well. And when you add in gaining seats in the Senate, which, given the nature of the 2020 Senate elections, probably means the Republicans now will be in a majority in all probability through 2022 or later. Very much different than what the Democrats hoped for. Some very big wins, some places where it was very hard fought. Florida, for example, remarkable outcome, both for governor and for senator. And on the House side, I think the first real break point was when 43 Republican House members decided that they would retire this year, which I think is the largest number in modern history. That gave them a tremendous number of openings to try to defend. And what you really saw, and I wrote my newsletter today about this, is you really saw a green wave of money. If you look at Texas, for example, where I think Beto O'Rourke will have spent over $70 million losing a U.S. Senate seat. And everywhere you turned around the country, particularly in House races, you were seeing enormous numbers of money coming in, whether it was from Bloomberg writing million-dollar checks, other people, various organizations. I think one of the hidden stories that will come out in the next 2 or 3 weeks is the sheer scale of this green wave that was seeking to drown the Republican Party and defeat the president.
You know, the amazing thing is though you ended up getting Clinton to change, and we balanced the budget for the first time. No, well, listen, I remember you guys doing that town hall. You were sitting on these little seats one day, and but we did balance the budget. We made real progress. There was a lot of give and take in that. Is Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, Adam Schiff, Gerald Nadler, are they capable of doing what Clinton did, which I think easily helped him get reelected 2 years later?
You know, I don't know. I thought earlier today that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell had a great interview, and he said to him something which I can reflect on because I was there, and that is that the politics of investigation may make your partisans happy, but may turn off a lot of people. I think the president clearly is going to reach out on things like infrastructure. He's going to reach out on some practical common sense steps on health care, including lowering the cost of drugs. I think he's going to try to find issues that make it very hard for the Democrats to say no. And then we'll see whether or not they are so rabid. And certainly the left wing of the Democratic Party is much more rabid than anything that either Clinton or I had to deal with in the 90s.
What's your reaction
it'll be interesting to see how it develops.
What's your reaction to Jeff Sessions' announcement today? Because I couldn't believe when he recused himself. If he had any thought that he would do this, I thought he would have owed the president at least the courtesy or the heads up, hey, I may have to recuse here. And we know the result of all of that. And I know now they're trying to go after the interim attorney general. But I think for a president not to have an attorney general on the most important case that he wanted in his administration has been very harmful.
Well, first of all, I think it was handled exactly right. It's the day after all the election. I think that the chief of staff, John Kelly, did the right thing. And in immediate response, knowing it was coming, the attorney general did the right thing in resigning. I will say just for a minute, if I could, Sean, I've known Jeff Sessions for a long time. He was a very solid conservative in the Senate. He actually helped organize the first Trump campaign meeting in Washington. And it has been sad to see him have to go through all this. And I suspect he's a very relieved guy tonight.
I've always known him to be a good man. I agree with you. This was not the right position, and it was it worked out, I think, just better for everybody at this point. Mr. Speaker, thank you so much. When we come back, okay, Jeff Sessions gone. Everything about the Mueller probe that the left doesn't want investigated that may now begin. This could be very interesting. Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett, Jason Chaffetz, and why didn't I work on election night? We'll explain all that straight ahead.
A lot going on right now. The president fired one of his earliest supporters in Washington, former senator, now attorney general, now former attorney general Jeff Sessions. We'll have details and thoughts on that in just a minute. But first, the big story, the smoke is clearing tonight for the most expensive midterm elections in American history. The outlines are just becoming visible. The results, it turns out, are confusing. It wasn't exactly a draw, but both sides can claim victory, and of course they are. In the House, Republicans did slightly worse than average in a midterm election. In the Senate, they did a little better. Some of the races played out as referendums on the president's first 2 years in office. Other races had nothing at all to do with Trump. In some races, hard-edged ideologues won. In others, doughy moderates did. It was basically a patchwork. There are no obvious takeaways from what happened last night. But there are some useful lessons, and that's what we'd like to spend some time talking about tonight. What exactly have we learned from 470 individual congressional elections, some big governor's races, and a full year of political debate? Well, the biggest news is that Democrats just won back the House of Representatives after 8 years. They are thrilled with that, obviously, and yet they don't appear to have any idea how they did it. As of tonight, there really is no Democratic program or platform or message. There's no Democratic plan for making the economy stronger or the country safer. There's only Donald Trump, whom they despise. The entire Democratic message is Trump. The president is often accused of narcissism, making everything about himself. But on that point, Democrats agree with him. They think everything is about Trump, too. Watch this clip from last night. It had just become clear that Democrats were about to retake the House. It was a big moment. It was really the apex of the night. And at that apex, a senior Democrat called the set at MSNBC to announce his party's top priority now that they have regained power. Here it is.
I've spoken to a senior Democratic source on the Ways and Means Committee who says tonight, breaking news, they do intend to request President Trump's tax returns. Getting your hands on those Trump tax returns, as everyone knows, would be a big deal for the committee.
Getting Trump's tax returns, that's the priority for Democrats, not infrastructure, not wages, not the looming threat of China or drug ODs in this country, or the shrinking middle class, not even health care. Trump's tax returns. That's what Democrats really want. Okay, maybe they'll get them. Maybe they'll get those returns. What then? What exactly will we learn from Trump's tax returns? That a casino owner once employed a clever accountant? That he made less than he claimed he did? Will anybody be shocked by any of that? Will anyone care about any of that? Or as with the Stormy Daniels saga that went on forever, will voters find themselves titillated for a moment and then lose interest? What do Trump's tax returns have to do with them anyway? Their premiums haven't gone down. It's all just noise. Almost all of this is just noise. And for the rest of us, there's a pretty simple lesson, and you'd think Democrats would have figured it out. But they have not figured it out. Congressman Jerry Nadler will likely be the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. Just today, Nadler was on a train back to Washington from New York, and he was overheard by somebody laying out his legislative priorities. First on the list, not making this up, impeaching Brett Kavanaugh and removing him from the Supreme Court. Apparently, that's what Democrats really believe voters want. More than anything else, get that Kavanaugh guy off the court. Congressman Adam Schiff of California, meanwhile, is poised to take over the House Intelligence Committee. He's been the ranking member there for the last couple of years. He says that come January, when he takes over, his main priority will be intensifying the Russia probe, because it's not intense enough or long-standing enough. Schiff apparently thinks that he can prove that Vladimir Putin somehow stole the 2016 election with a few dozen Facebook ads that hardly anybody saw. Can Schiff really prove that? Who knows? Maybe. What we can know for certain is that nobody outside Washington will care at all if he does prove it. The entire Russia conversation is irrelevant and dumb. That has been proven already. It has nothing to do with anything, and everybody knows it. Democrats are the only ones who don't know it yet. As of right now, the entire Democratic platform can be summed up in one sentence. Donald Trump is a bad person. That's what they plan to run on in the next presidential election, which incidentally starts today, right now. Good luck with that. It's a virtual guarantee that Trump will serve a full 8 years if you make it about him. And by the way, so is all the race talk. That's not helping you. Somewhere along the way, Democrats became convinced they could win a